Hey CBC kids, it is Sir Knight Josh here, and we're going to continue our series today on the armor of God. Now I encourage you guys before and after these videos to be in the Word. This is in Ephesians chapter 6. This is written by the Apostle Paul, and I hope you guys are reading through this every week as a family as we talk about the 7 pieces of the armor of God. Now we're going to kind of catch up here on what we've talked about before and the piece of armor that we're going to talk about today. So again, this is in Ephesians chapter 6, and let's just go ahead and read until we get to our part today. It says, "Finally, be strong in the Lord and in the strength of his might. Put on the whole armor of God, that you may be able to stand against the schemes of the devil. For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the cosmic powers over this present darkness, against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly places. Therefore, take up the whole armor of God, that you may be able to withstand in the evil day, and having done all, to stand firm. Stand therefore, having fastened on the belt of truth." Remember, we talked about the belt of truth and how in Jesus we find the ultimate absolute truth that holds all things together. Jesus is the truth. And then having put on the breastplate of righteousness. That's what we talked about last week, the breastplate of righteousness, and how Jesus Christ, his righteousness, covers us. I told you guys about a verse in 2 Corinthians 5:21 that says, "He who knew no sin, Jesus, became sin so that we could become the righteousness of God." So that righteousness covers us, and it is fully a gift from Jesus Christ. You and I cannot be righteous in our own works and in our own good deeds and with our own effort. It takes Jesus to make us righteous, and that's what he gifted us through his work on the cross. Now, here we get to our third piece of armor here. Right after the breastplate of righteousness, it says, "And as shoes for your feet, having put on the readiness given by the gospel of peace." The gospel of peace. Now, I bet you guys have experienced some kind of anxiety before, and it feels like maybe your life can feel a little bit shaky at times, right? We need feet that can stand firm and stand still. And we find that anchor that gives us stability and consistency in the gospel truth. And we need to be standing with the gospel of peace at our feet so that we're not wavering, so that we can stand firm, so we can hold our ground, standing still on the ground. Now, the gospel is the good news of Jesus in our place. Okay? Here's what I want you guys to do as we talk about the gospel of peace. As a family, I want you to try to explain to each other, what is the gospel? What does the gospel mean? Because if we're going to stand with the gospel of peace, we need to be able to explain what the gospel even is. Now here, go ahead and pause this video for just a couple minutes, and I want you each to try to explain what the gospel is to each other. Now this may seem a little silly, but there is really nothing more important, because how can we continue to teach ourselves the gospel and grow deeper into the gospel if we can't articulate it and speak it ourselves? How can we share the gospel with our neighbors if we believe that the gospel is God's means to save us? How can we share it with other people if we don't know what it means? So pause the video for just a minute, talk about what is the gospel. Now I want to kind of give you guys an explanation. The gospel in 4 words is this: Jesus in my place. The gospel is that you and I are both sinners. We are all sinners, filled with sin, desperately wicked, and unable to save ourselves. We're unable to be good enough and righteous enough to match God's holiness. See, we are sinful and God is perfectly holy. So there is no sin in God, and he cannot be in fellowship with sin. But the good news is that Jesus saw us trapped in our sin, and he loved us so much that he sent his son, Jesus Christ, to come live the perfect life that we couldn't live, and then to die the death that we deserved in our place, so that he could gift us his righteousness and we could be reconciled or brought back together in relationship with God forever. That's how God intended it from the start in the garden. He wanted to be in community and in relationship with us. But sin put this huge gap between us. Okay, sin distanced us from God. And Jesus is the bridge that brings us back together. And the gospel is that you and I are both sinners and we deserve to be apart from God in hell forever. But Jesus loved us so much that he didn't leave us there. And we can accept and put our full faith and trust in Jesus Christ and what he did on the cross for us. And that brings us back into relationship with the Father. Now, how can we stand in the gospel of peace if we're not constantly preaching the gospel to ourselves every day? It's this gospel message that keeps us anchored, that keeps my feet right underneath me, that keeps me solid, standing firm on the ground. Now, in order to not waver, you need to be able to every single day identify Christ's work and what it's done for you. Not your own work, but think about the gospel. Think about what Christ accomplished for you. That gives us stability. That gives us ground to stand on. It means we can stand firm because we know how much Jesus Christ loves us. So we need to fasten the belt of truth around us. We need to put on the breastplate of righteousness that Jesus Christ puts on us. And we need to have the readiness, the shoes on our feet, having put on the readiness given by the gospel of peace. Put on the gospel of peace. Know the gospel. Saturate yourself in the gospel. Cover yourself in that message every single day. Remind yourself, I'm living a life that is motivated by what Christ did for me and not what I can do for myself. Christ saved me. I didn't save myself. The gospel is Jesus in my place. We can stand firm on that. So next week, we're going to continue through the armor of God. We're going to be on part number 4. So be ready. Come with your armor on. You know what I would love to see is some of you guys posting some pictures in some armor. I want you to make some armor. Maybe you can find some toys around the house or some blankets, and maybe you can just use some different items around the house to make some armor to put on. And I want to see you guys wearing it. We'll go ahead and make a post encouraging you guys to do that here in the next week or so. And I cannot wait to see you put it on. Because every single day we need to put on the armor of God. Because there is spiritual warfare out there. And Paul is trying to remind us what we need to equip ourselves with and put on every day to be prepared and to protect ourselves from evil. Hey, we love you guys, and we'll see you next week.